Tell us in the comments where in the world you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. It began as a whisper in the Cold War, a ghost in the machine designed to survive the unthinkable. A network of minds built to withstand nuclear annihilation. From a handful of connected computers in university labs to a sprawling digital universe in your pocket, this is the story of the most transformative invention in human history. How did a military experiment escape the Pentagon to connect billions, reshape societies, and define the modern world? This is the untold story of the Internet. Long before the first silicon chip hummed to life, before the world was woven together by invisible threads of data, a single visionary mind imagined a future that was pure science fiction. The year was 1945. The world was emerging from the colossal shadow of the Second World War, a conflict that had not only redrawn maps, but had also unleashed an unprecedented explosion of information. Scientists, engineers, and policymakers were drowning in a sea of research papers, reports, and technical documents. It was in this chaotic aftermath that Vannevar Bush, the head of the U.S. Office of Scientific Research and Development, penned an essay for the Atlantic Monthly that would echo through the decades. Titled, "As We May Think," it was less a technical blueprint and more a profound philosophical meditation on the future of human knowledge. Bush argued that the linear, hierarchical methods of storing and retrieving information, like alphabetical indexes and library card catalogs, were archaic and fundamentally misaligned with the way the human mind actually works. Our minds, he observed, operate by association, leaping from one idea to the next through a web of connected thoughts. From this insight, he conceived of a hypothetical device he called the Memex. It was a desk-like machine, a private file and library that would store vast amounts of information: books, articles, personal notes, photographs, on microfilm. But its true genius lay not in storage, but in retrieval. A user could instantly call up any document and, more importantly, create associative trails, linking different pieces of information together. A user studying the history of the longbow could link a historical text to a physics paper on elasticity and a cultural article on medieval warfare, creating a permanent, personalized path through the data. This trail could then be named, saved, and even shared with others. The Memex was never built. The technology of the 1940s was simply not up to the task, but the concept was a seed planted in fertile ground. It was the first detailed articulation of a system that would later be called hypertext, the foundational principle of the World Wide Web. Bush's dream of a world brain, a collective, interconnected human memory, inspired the generations of pioneers who would turn his mechanical fantasy into our digital reality. On October 4, 1957, the familiar hum of the post-war world was pierced by a new alien sound, a faint electronic beep broadcast from low Earth orbit. It was the signal from Sputnik 1, the Soviet Union's beach ball-sized satellite, and it sent a shockwave of anxiety across the United States. The Sputnik crisis was more than just a blow to national pride. It was a terrifying demonstration that America was falling behind its Cold War adversary in the crucial arena of technology. The fear was palpable. If the Soviets could put a satellite in space, they could certainly launch a nuclear missile across the oceans. President Dwight D. Eisenhower knew that a reactive, bureaucratic response would not be enough. America needed a new kind of organization, one that could think beyond the next budget cycle and invest in radical, game-changing ideas. In February 1958, he signed the order creating the Advanced Research Projects Agency, or ARPA. Its mission was clear and urgent: to prevent strategic surprise and to ensure the United States maintained a decisive technological edge. Unlike other military research divisions, ARPA was designed to be lean, agile, and free from inter-service rivalry. It was a collection of brilliant program managers given immense autonomy and funding to pursue high-risk, high-reward projects that others would deem too futuristic or too impractical. Initially, its focus was on space technology and ballistic missile defense. However, the agency's destiny would be reshaped by a psychologist and computer scientist named J.C.R. Licklider. In 1962, Licklider became the head of a new ARPA office focused on information processing. He wasn't just interested in making computers faster calculators. He envisioned a future of man-computer symbiosis. He wrote a series of memos outlining his dream of an intergalactic computer network, a globally interconnected set of computers through which users could access data and programs from any site. This was a revolutionary idea in an era when computers were monolithic machines that couldn't even communicate with others of their own kind. Licklider's vision convinced his successors at ARPA to shift the agency's focus, pouring resources into the challenge of computer networking. The Cold War imperative had created the vehicle, but it was this audacious dream of interconnectedness that set its course toward a networked future. The air in the Bolter Hall Computer Lab at UCLA was thick with anticipation. It was 10:30 p.m. on a cool autumn evening, October 29, 1969. In this room, a small team of scientists and students were about to attempt the impossible: to speak to another computer hundreds of miles away. The project, funded by ARPA, was called ARPANET. The goal was to create a decentralized computer network that could withstand a partial outage, such as a nuclear attack, by routing information around the damage. At the heart of the system were interface message processors, or IMPs, refrigerator-sized machines that acted as gateways for the host computers. The first node was here at UCLA. The second was at the Stanford Research Institute. Tonight was the first true test. Professor Leonard Kleinrock and his student programmer, Charlie Klein, were at the controls of the UCLA host computer. Their objective was simple: to log in remotely to the SRI machine. The command to do so was login. Klein sat at the terminal, a telephone headset connecting him to his counterpart at SRI, Bill Duvall. The plan was for Klein to type the command, letter by letter, while Duvall confirmed its reception over the phone. Klein typed the first letter, L. He asked over the phone, "Did you get the L?" From 350 miles away, the voice came back, "Got the L." The connection was working. A palpable sense of excitement filled the room. This was the moment. Klein pressed the next key. "O. Did you get the O?" he asked. Duvall's voice confirmed, "Got the O." The system was holding. The dream was becoming a reality. Then, Klein typed the third letter, G. The system crashed. The link between UCLA and SRI was severed. The first message ever sent across this fledgling internet was not a profound statement or a triumphant declaration. It was simply LO, as in, lo and behold. It was an accidental, almost poetic fragment. A digital birth cry that was both a failure and a monumental success. It was proof that two machines, separated by a vast physical distance, could communicate. An hour or so later, after resetting the systems, the team successfully completed the full login. But history remembers that first, flawed attempt. It was the humble, stuttering start of a revolution, the moment a ghost in one machine reached out and touched another for the very first time. ARPANET was not built by a corporation or a rigid military hierarchy. It was constructed by a loose-knit tribe of graduate students, academics, and long-haired researchers who were more interested in solving fascinating technical puzzles than in changing the world. This unique culture of collaborative, decentralized innovation was the network's secret weapon. The community congregated around the Network Working Group, a self-organized collective of minds from the various universities and research centers involved in the project. Their meetings were informal, often chaotic affairs, fueled by intellectual curiosity and a shared sense of pioneering a new frontier. There was no top-down authority dictating how the network should be built. Instead, a young UCLA graduate student named Steve Crocker came up with an ingenious solution to coordinate their efforts: the Request for Comments, or RFC. In April 1969, Crocker, unable to sleep, wrote down his initial thoughts on the host-to-host protocols. Fearing his ideas might sound presumptuous, he titled the memo "Request for Comments" to encourage feedback and debate rather than issue a decree. This humble title belied its revolutionary nature. The RFC system became the de facto design process for ARPANET and later the Internet. Anyone could write an RFC, proposing a standard or documenting a piece of the network's architecture. The documents were distributed electronically, and ideas were debated, refined, or discarded based on their technical merit, not the author's rank or affiliation. This open, meritocratic process was the polar opposite of the closed, proprietary systems being developed by giants like IBM. It fostered a spirit of shared ownership and collective problem-solving. Figures who would become legends of the Internet, Vint Cerf, Bob Kahn, John Postel, and many others, cut their teeth in this environment, collaborating on the fundamental protocols that would allow disparate networks to communicate. They weren't renegades in the sense of breaking laws, but they were rebelling against the established way of doing things. They were building a network in their own image, open, distributed, and resilient. This cultural DNA, forged in the late nights and spirited debates of the Network Working Group, would become one of the most enduring and powerful legacies of the ARPANET project. In the grand, tumultuous court of technological innovation, the most profound changes often arrive not with a thunderous proclamation, but with a quiet whisper. While the architects of the ARPANET were focused on grand designs of resource sharing and remote computing, a revolution was brewing in the unassuming spaces between the network's nodes. This was not a revolution of processing power, but of human connection. Much like Jane Seymour, who navigated the treacherous Tudor Court with quiet grace and a focus on reconciliation, a simple application was about to emerge that would gently yet irrevocably alter the network's destiny. It was 1971, and a computer engineer at Bolt, Beranek and Newman named Ray Tomlinson was experimenting. He was working with two programs. One, SNDMSG, allowed users on the same mainframe computer to leave messages for one another. Another, CPYNet, could transfer files between separate computers on the ARPANET. Tomlinson's quiet innovation was to combine them. He envisioned a way to send a message from a user on one computer directly to a user on another. The technical challenge was distinguishing a local user from a network user. His solution was elegant, simple, and has become a universal symbol of our digital age: the A sign. He chose it simply because it made sense, a symbol to separate the user's name at a specific host computer. His first test message, sent between two computers sitting side by side in his lab, was likely a string of gibberish, something like QWERTY WYOP. He barely remembered it himself, a testament to the humble origins of a world-changing technology. Yet, this was the birth of network electronic mail, or email. It was the network's first killer app. Suddenly, the ARPANET was more than a tool for scientists to run programs on distant machines. It became a conduit for conversation, for collaboration, for community. Like Queen Jane's subtle diplomacy that reconnected King Henry with his estranged daughter Mary, email reconnected people, fostering a sense of shared space and purpose across vast physical distances. It was not what the Pentagon had planned for, but its utility was undeniable. It was the quiet, human-centered application that gave the cold, mechanical network a soul. As the ARPANET grew, so did the ambition of its creators. The initial network was a success, but it was an island. Beyond its shores, other networks were emerging, each a separate digital kingdom with its own unique customs and languages. There was the NPL network in the UK, the Cyclades network in France, and various satellite and radio networks. They were all brilliant in their own right, but they could not speak to one another. The digital world was becoming a Tower of Babel, a collection of fragmented fiefdoms incapable of unity. What was needed was not another clever piece of hardware, but a universal law, a protocol of diplomacy that all could agree upon. This challenge brings to mind the court of Henry VIII after the fall of Anne Boleyn. Turmoil and uncertainty reigned. It was Jane Seymour, with her motto "Bound to Obey and Serve," who brought a new sense of order and a clear path forward. She established a single, recognized line of succession, a common standard that unified the court's purpose. In the world of networking, two figures, Vinton Cerf and Robert Kahn, stepped into a similar role. They were the quiet diplomats, tasked with creating a digital lingua franca. Their goal was to develop a set of rules that would allow disparate networks to interconnect seamlessly, creating a true internet. The result of their collaboration was the Transmission Control Protocol and the Internet Protocol, collectively known as TCP/IP. The concept was revolutionary in its simplicity and robustness. TCP would be responsible for breaking down data into small packets on the sender's end and reliably reassembling them at the destination. IP would act as the postal service, handling the addressing and routing of these packets across the various interconnected networks. No single network needed to know the inner workings of another. They only needed to obey and serve the common language of TCP/IP. It was a treaty, a constitution for a network of networks. Implementing it was a monumental task, culminating on January 1, 1983, a day known as Flag Day, when the entire ARPANET switched over. It was a quiet, coordinated cutover, but its impact was seismic. The age of isolated networks was over. The foundation for a single global internet bound by a common set of rules had been laid. For all its revolutionary potential, the ARPANET remained a domain of the military and its chosen contractors. It was a powerful but exclusive club, a royal court closed to the wider world. For the internet to truly flourish, it needed to produce an heir, a successor network that could carry the torch into new realms, beyond the immediate concerns of national defense. This moment of transition mirrors a crucial point in Tudor history. Jane Seymour's greatest contribution, the one that secured her legacy, was the birth of a male heir, the future King Edward VI. His birth ensured the continuation of the Tudor dynasty, shifting the kingdom's focus from Henry's immediate marital and political battles to the long-term stability and future of the realm. A similar dynastic shift was needed for the internet. The heir apparent came from an unlikely source, the National Science Foundation, or NSF. In the mid-1980s, the NSF faced a dilemma. Supercomputing centers were being established across the United States for academic research, but scientists struggled to gain access to them. The solution was to create a new network to connect these centers, and by extension, the nation's universities. This network was ARPANET. Initially, it was just another network, but the NSF made a critical decision. They built their new backbone using the universal TCP/IP protocols and, crucially, upgraded the infrastructure. In 1986, the NSFnet backbone went live with transmission speeds of 56 kilobits per second, a significant leap from the ARPANET. But this was just the beginning. The network was so successful that it was upgraded again and again, reaching a blistering 45 megabits per second by the early 1990s. This powerful new backbone became the dominant force, the de facto successor to the aging ARPANET, which was officially decommissioned in 1990. The NSFnet became the Internet's new core. More importantly, the NSF's acceptable use policy opened the doors to a flood of academic and research traffic. The network's purpose was no longer military. It was the pursuit of knowledge. Like Prince Edward, NSFnet was the future, a robust, vibrant successor that ensured the network's legacy would grow far beyond the vision of its original parent. The burgeoning Internet, unified by TCP/IP and supercharged by the NSFnet backbone, was a marvel of engineering. But for anyone outside a small circle of experts, it was utterly inscrutable. Navigating this world required speaking a language of numbers. Every computer, every server, every destination on the network was identified by a string of digits. Its IP address like 192.0.2.146. To connect with another machine, you had to know its number. The community maintained a single text file, hosts.txt, that listed all the known machines and their corresponding addresses. It was like a phone book for the entire network. And as the network grew, this single file became a bottleneck, an arcane and unwieldy scroll of technical jargon. The Internet was powerful, but it lacked a human face. It needed a simplifying grace, a way to make itself approachable to the common person. This transformation is reminiscent of the role Jane Seymour played at court. She replaced the complex, dazzling, and often dangerous ambition of Anne Boleyn with a persona of plain-spoken gentleness and accessibility. She made the role of queen seem less like a political chess piece and more like a relatable human position. The Internet needed a similar transformation, and it came from computer scientist Paul Mockapetris. In 1983, he designed the Domain Name System, or DNS. The concept was revolutionary in its elegance. Instead of one central hosts.txt file, DNS created a distributed hierarchical database. It acted as the Internet's official translator. When a user typed a simple, memorable name like UCLA.edu into their computer, the DNS would, in the background, look up the corresponding numerical IP address, allowing the connection to be made seamlessly. It replaced the cold, robotic language of numbers with the warm, intuitive language of words and names. Suddenly, the internet had addresses that made sense to people, not just to machines. It was a profound psychological shift. The network was no longer a realm of abstract coordinates. It was a space of named places. Just as Jane Seymour's quiet influence gave the court a human touch, DNS gave the internet a human, readable form, opening the door for millions who would have been intimidated by its numerical complexity. It was the quiet system that gave the digital world a name. In the late 1980s, amidst the sprawling corridors and complex machinery of CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, a quiet revolution was brewing. It wasn't a revolution of political power or royal succession, but one of information. A British scientist named Tim Berners-Lee was grappling with a problem of immense scale. Thousands of researchers, spread across the globe, needed a way to share and link their data seamlessly. The existing systems were a chaotic patchwork of different networks and formats, a digital Tower of Babel. His solution, elegant in its simplicity, was to create a universal language for sharing information. He envisioned a system built on three core pillars: the URL, a unique address for every document; HTTP, a protocol to fetch those documents; and HTML, a simple language to format them. He called his creation the World Wide Web. This was not an invention born of a desire for profit or fame. It was a tool built for a community, designed to be decentralized and open, a web for everyone. Berners-Lee's vision was one of connection, of breaking down barriers between isolated nodes of knowledge. In this, we find a curious parallel in the court of Henry VIII. Jane Seymour, like Berners-Lee, stepped into a system of immense complexity and fragmentation. The English court was a network of competing factions, personal animosities, and religious division, all revolving around the volatile processing unit of the king. Jane's task was to create a new protocol for communication, a new way for these disparate parts to connect. Her quiet diplomacy, her unwavering piety, and her gentle demeanor were her version of HTML and HTTP, a standardized language of stability that all factions could understand. She wasn't building a system for her own aggrandizement. She was weaving a web to catch a falling kingdom, creating links between the king and his estranged daughter Mary, between the old aristocracy and the new, all to serve a greater purpose: the security and continuity of the realm. Berners-Lee gave his invention to the world for free, ensuring it would grow organically. Jane Seymour gave her life for the realm, ensuring the Tudor dynasty would have its heir, an act of ultimate selflessness that laid the foundation for a new era. Tim Berners-Lee's World Wide Web was a masterpiece of engineering, but for the average person, it remained an invisible, text-based world accessible only to academics and technicians. It lacked a window. That window was thrown open in 1993 at the University of Illinois, where a team of students led by Mark Andreessen created Mosaic. For the first time, the web had a friendly face. Mosaic was a graphical browser. It could display images alongside text. It had clickable links that were easy to understand, and it was simple to install and use. Suddenly, the web was not just for scientists. It was a vibrant, visual space for everyone. This innovation was so profound that it ignited a frantic race for dominance. Andreessen left to form Netscape, whose Navigator browser quickly captured the market. Microsoft, initially slow to react, responded with its own browser, Internet Explorer, sparking the First Browser War, a battle to control the primary gateway to this new digital world. This technological upheaval mirrors the transformation Jane Seymour brought to the Tudor Court. Before her, the court's interface was one of high drama, intellectual jousting, and religious conflict, epitomized by the fiery Anne Boleyn. It was a complex, often terrifying system for outsiders to navigate. Jane provided a new graphical user interface for the monarchy. Her calm, pious, and submissive persona was the court's mosaic, a simple, visually reassuring window into the king's world. She replaced the complex command line interface of Anne's ambition with the simple point-and-click iconography of domesticity and duty. Her influence made the court accessible and understandable in a new way, attracting support from conservative factions who had been alienated. This, in turn, sparked a different kind of war. With Jane as the favored platform, factions like the Howards and the Boleyn remnants vied against the rising Seymours for control over the browser, the primary means of accessing the king's power and favor. Each faction fought to become the default gateway to royal patronage, a struggle for supremacy every bit as fierce as the one between Netscape and Microsoft. With user-friendly browsers making the web accessible, the world began to see its commercial potential. What followed was a period of speculative frenzy unlike any other, the dot-com boom. The initial public offering of Netscape in 1995 acted as the starting pistol for a new gold rush. Seemingly overnight, any company with a .com at the end of its name saw its valuation soar to astronomical heights, often with no clear business model or path to profitability. Investors, gripped by a fear of missing out, poured billions into fledgling internet startups, from online pet food suppliers to virtual bookstores. It was a time of boundless optimism, a belief that the old rules of economics no longer applied in this new digital frontier. Fortunes were made on paper in an instant, and the air crackled with the promise of a technology that would fundamentally reshape global commerce and culture. The gold wasn't in the ground. It was in the ether, in the clicks and eyeballs and the limitless potential of a connected planet. This mad rush for future wealth finds its Tudor equivalent in the aftermath of Jane Seymour's greatest achievement, the birth of a male heir, Prince Edward, in October 1537. Her quiet biological triumph triggered a political gold rush within the English court. For years, the kingdom's future had been a risky, speculative venture. Now, with a healthy male heir, the Tudor dynasty was suddenly a blue-chip stock, and the market for influence went into a frenzy. Jane had, in effect, launched the most valuable IPO in the kingdom. Courtiers and noble families scrambled to invest in the new reality. The Seymour family's stock, naturally, skyrocketed, with Jane's brothers, Edward and Thomas, securing immense power and titles. Other families rushed to align themselves with the new center of gravity, seeking positions in the young prince's household, speculating on who would hold power during his minority. It was the court's .com boom, where political capital was the currency, and proximity to the new heir was the ultimate measure of a family's valuation. Jane's quiet act had unleashed a speculative mania, reshaping the landscape of power for a generation. While the dot-com boom was fueled by high finance and corporate ambition, another, more personal revolution was happening in living rooms across the world. The internet was coming home, and for millions, It arrived on a compact disc sent through the post. Companies like America Online or AOL became the dominant internet service providers, or ISPs. They weren't just selling a connection, they were selling an experience. The screech and hum of the dial-up modem became the soundtrack of an era, a sound that promised entry into a new world. AOL's masterstroke was its walled garden approach. It provided a curated, easy-to-use portal with email, chat rooms, and content, shielding users from the vast, chaotic wilderness of the open web. It created communities and fostered a new kind of social interaction. The cheerful, disembodied voice announcing, "You've got mail," became a cultural touchstone, a simple notification that signified connection, friendship, and the thrill of a new message from the digital world. Jane Seymour, in her own way, was the Tudor Court's first great internet service provider. She took the chaotic, dangerous, and often inaccessible world of King Henry VIII and packaged it into a safe, manageable experience for those around her. She created a walled garden of piety and domestic calm within the treacherous walls of the palace. Her court was not a place of cutthroat intellectual debate or risky political maneuvering, but a curated space focused on needlework, prayer, and family. She provided the essential connection service between a wrathful king and his vulnerable subjects. Most famously, she re-established the link between Henry and his first daughter Mary, who had been disinherited and declared illegitimate. Jane acted as the modem, painstakingly negotiating the protocol that would allow their messages of reconciliation to get through. Her quiet reassurances and gentle guidance were the court's version of "You've got mail," a welcome notification that a connection had been restored, that a message of peace had been delivered, fundamentally changing the nature of communication within the kingdom's highest circle. By the mid-1990s, the World Wide Web was a sprawling, chaotic frontier. It was a digital library with millions of books, but no card catalog. Finding relevant information was a frustrating exercise, reliant on early search engines like AltaVista, Lycos, and Excite. These platforms primarily ranked pages based on how many times a search term appeared on them, a system that was easily manipulated and often returned a deluge of irrelevant results. The web was growing exponentially, but our ability to navigate it was lagging far behind. This was the problem that two Stanford PhD students, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, set out to solve. They theorized that the web's structure held the key to its organization. In their view, a link from one page to another was a vote of confidence, an endorsement of that page's quality and relevance. A page with many incoming links from reputable sources was therefore more valuable than a page with few or none. This deceptively simple idea formed the basis of their research project, initially nicknamed Backrub. The algorithm they developed, which they would later call PageRank, didn't just count keywords. It analyzed the entire link structure of the web to determine a page's importance. It was a revolutionary approach that treated the web as a democracy of information, where the collective judgment of web creators determined what was most valuable. In 1997, they registered the domain name Google.com, a playful misspelling of Google, the mathematical term for the number 1 followed by 100 zeros, reflecting their mission to organize a seemingly infinite amount of information. Operating out of a friend's garage in Menlo Park, California, they built a search engine that was not only more accurate but also remarkably fast and clean. While competitors cluttered their home pages with news, weather, and ads, Google's interface was minimalist and focused on a single task: search. This user-centric philosophy, encapsulated in their informal motto, "Don't be evil," quickly won over a loyal following. Google wasn't just another search engine. It was a tool that finally made the web's vast chaos navigable, transforming a disorganized repository of data into a functional global library for everyone. The late 1990s were a period of irrational exuberance. The promise of the internet fueled a speculative frenzy unlike anything seen since the Roaring '20s. Venture capitalists, flush with cash, poured billions into any startup with a .com in its name, often with little regard for traditional business metrics like revenue or profitability. The prevailing belief was that in this new economy, the old rules no longer applied. The goal was to get big fast, capturing market share and eyeballs at any cost, with the assumption that profits would magically materialize later. This led to the rise of companies with astronomical valuations but flimsy foundations. Firms like Pets.com, which sold pet supplies online, and Webvan, an ambitious grocery delivery service, became symbols of the era, spending lavishly on advertising and infrastructure while hemorrhaging money. The Nasdaq Composite Stock Index, heavy with these tech companies, soared from under 1,000 points in 1995 to over 5,000 by early 2000. But the party could not last forever. The first signs of trouble appeared in March 2000. A few high-profile companies began to falter, and a wave of sell-offs triggered a chain reaction. The speculative bubble, inflated by hype and easy money, had finally burst. Panic replaced optimism on Wall Street. The Nasdaq began a catastrophic slide, eventually losing nearly 80% of its value over the next 2 years. The fallout was immense. Hundreds of .com companies, once the darlings of the market, went bankrupt, laying off tens of thousands of employees and wiping out trillions of dollars in investor wealth. The spectacular failures of companies like Boo.com, which burned through $135 million in months, became cautionary tales. The crash was a brutal but necessary correction. It cleared away the unsustainable business models and forced the industry to mature. The survivors of the .com crash, like Amazon and a still private Google, were those built on solid technology and a clear path to profitability. The era of easy money was over, but the true potential of the internet was just beginning to be realized. Built upon the ruins of the first digital gold rush, in the ashes of the .com crash, a new vision for the internet began to emerge. The first era of the web, Web 1.0, had been largely a one-way street. Corporations and institutions created static websites, and the public consumed the information. It was a digital broadcast medium, a collection of online brochures and catalogs. But the survivors of the crash and a new wave of innovators realized that the web's true power lay not in broadcasting, but in connection and participation. This new paradigm was famously dubbed Web 2.0 by publisher Tim O'Reilly in 2004. It wasn't a technical update, but a philosophical shift. The internet was no longer just a place to read. It was a platform to write, create, share, and collaborate. The user was no longer a passive audience member, but an active participant, a co-creator of the digital world. This shift was powered by a host of new platforms and technologies that made it easy for anyone to contribute. The rise of blogging platforms like Blogger and WordPress gave individuals a personal printing press, allowing them to share their thoughts and expertise with a global audience. Photo-sharing sites like Flickr transformed personal photography into a social, community-driven activity, with users tagging and commenting on each other's work. Perhaps the most radical experiment in this new collaborative spirit was Wikipedia, launched in 2001. The idea that a reliable, comprehensive encyclopedia could be built and maintained by an army of anonymous volunteers seemed absurd, yet it quickly outpaced traditional encyclopedias in scope and timeliness. Social networking platforms like Friendster, and more enduringly, MySpace and a fledgling Facebook, connected people in unprecedented ways, allowing them to build digital representations of their social lives. The read-write web democratized content creation, breaking down the barriers between producers and consumers, and unleashing a torrent of user-generated content that would fundamentally reshape media, culture, and communication for years to come. At the dawn of the 21st century, the mobile phone was primarily a communication device. We used them to make calls and send simple text messages. While smart devices like the BlackBerry excelled at mobile email and PDAs offered digital calendars, the mobile internet experience was slow, clunky, and frustrating. Websites were rendered poorly on tiny screens, and functionality was severely limited. The digital world and the physical world remained largely separate. To truly access the power of the internet, you needed to be at a computer. This all changed on January 9, 2007. On stage in San Francisco, Apple co-founder Steve Jobs unveiled a device that he promised would reinvent the phone: the iPhone. It was a revolutionary product that combined three things: a widescreen iPod with touch controls, a breakthrough internet communicator, and a mobile phone, into a single, elegant package. Its defining feature was the large multi-touch display that dispensed with physical keyboards and styluses, allowing users to interact with software using their fingers in a natural, intuitive way. Initially, the iPhone was a powerful but closed system. The true revolution began a year later in 2008 with the launch of the App Store. This masterstroke created a new ecosystem, allowing third-party developers to create and sell their own software directly to users. It unleashed a wave of creativity, giving birth to millions of applications that could do everything from navigating city streets to playing games to identifying a song playing in a cafe. The App Store transformed the phone from a device with a fixed set of features into a powerful, pocket-sized computer whose capabilities were constantly expanding. The launch of Google's Android operating system soon after provided a robust competitor, accelerating innovation and making smartphones accessible to billions of people worldwide. This wasn't just an evolution of the mobile phone. It was a fundamental shift in how humans interacted with technology and with each other. The smartphone put the internet in our pockets, permanently blurring the line between our online and offline lives, and setting the stage for the next decade of technological change. In the volatile court of Henry VIII, power was not merely seized, it was woven. Long before silicon chips and fiber optics, the most powerful networks were forged from blood, ambition, and strategic alliance. Jane Seymour, often perceived as plain and passive, was, in fact, one of the era's master network architects. Her family, the Seymours of Wiltshire, were country gentry, respectable, but far from the pinnacle of power. Jane's ascent to the throne was the catalyst that transformed their status, and she understood that her survival and their future depended on building a robust and loyal social network. Her platform was the court itself, and her users were the nobility, the clergy, and the servants who moved through the royal palaces. Unlike Anne Boleyn, whose network was often international and intellectual, Jane's was deeply, pragmatically English. Her primary nodes were her two ambitious brothers, Edward and Thomas Seymour. With Jane as queen, they were elevated to the peerage and the Privy Council, becoming her key administrators and enforcers. Through them, she could extend her influence, placing loyalists in key positions, gathering information, and subtly shaping the king's decisions. This wasn't a network built on public declarations, but on quiet conversations in private chambers, on shared glances during a feast, on the careful distribution of royal favor. She connected with the conservative faction at court, those who had bristled under Anne Boleyn's reformist zeal, offering them a return to tradition and stability. She also mended the most critical broken link in the kingdom, the one between King Henry and his estranged first daughter, Mary. By tirelessly advocating for Mary's return to court and favor, Jane wasn't just being kind. She was performing a system-critical update, stabilizing the dynasty and earning the loyalty of Mary's considerable faction of supporters. Her network's ultimate goal was singular: to produce a male heir, the connection that would secure the Tudor dynasty for a generation and elevate the Seymours to the permanent heart of the English power structure. To live in Henry VIII's court was to exist within a state of total surveillance. Every word was a potential data point, every letter a possible security breach. The air itself seemed to listen, thick with the paranoia that had sent Jane's predecessor to the executioner's block. This was the dark side of the Tudor court, a world where personal cybersecurity was a matter of life and death. The system's administrator was the formidable Thomas Cromwell, the king's chief minister, who had constructed an intelligence network that reached into every corner of the kingdom. His spies were the kingdom's malware, invisible and pervasive, searching for any vulnerability, any hint of treason or dissent. For Queen Jane, navigating this treacherous environment required a sophisticated personal firewall. She understood that her public persona was her greatest defense. Her famous motto, "Bound to obey and serve," was more than a declaration of subservience. It was a piece of carefully crafted code, an encryption of her true thoughts and ambitions. It broadcasted a signal of non-threatening loyalty, making her an uninteresting target for the surveillance state. While Anne Boleyn had been bold, her outspoken nature creating countless system vulnerabilities, Jane practiced meticulous information discipline. She kept her counsel, confided in a tiny, trusted inner circle, and ensured her communications were secure from prying eyes and ears. The greatest test of her defenses came with the Pilgrimage of Grace, a massive uprising in the north against Henry's religious reforms. This was a catastrophic system failure for the Tudor regime. When Jane publicly knelt before Henry and begged him to restore the monasteries, it was a moment of immense risk, a direct challenge to the king's policy. It was a calculated risk, a momentary lowering of her firewall to transmit a critical message of support to the kingdom's conservative faction. Henry furiously reminded her of the fate of other queens who meddled in state affairs. She immediately retreated, her defenses back up, having shown her sympathies without committing a fatal error. She had survived the system's most dangerous test, proving that in the Tudor surveillance state, silence and subtlety were the ultimate forms of protection. The English Reformation was a battle for the soul of a nation, a fight over the very operating system of belief. The established network of the Catholic Church, with its centuries of tradition and a direct link to Rome, was being dismantled. In its place, Thomas Cromwell and Archbishop Cranmer were installing a new, state-controlled network, one that prioritized the king's authority and throttled the flow of traditional doctrine. In this fierce ideological war, Jane Seymour became an unlikely champion for a different kind of freedom, the freedom of traditional worship, a fight for a more neutral and open religious landscape. She represented the millions of English subjects who were alarmed by the speed and severity of the reforms. They didn't want the old Internet of Rome shut down entirely, nor did they want the new, faster broadband of Protestantism to be their only option. Jane's fight was not waged in pulpits or pamphlets, but in the quiet advocacy she practiced within the king's private chambers. She was a known sympathizer of the old faith. Her most significant act in this fight was her persistent and gentle campaign to restore Princess Mary to the line of succession. Mary was the living symbol of the old ways, a bastion of Catholic faith. By championing her cause, Jane was fighting to keep that connection alive and integrated into the national mainframe. Restoring Mary was akin to arguing for net neutrality. It ensured that a vital, albeit older stream of data, the Catholic lineage, was not unfairly deprioritized or blocked from the network of royal succession. Her plea for the monasteries during the Pilgrimage of Grace was another attempt to keep the network open. She saw the monasteries not just as religious houses, but as essential community hubs providing charity, education, and spiritual access to the people. Their dissolution was, in her view, shutting down vital servers, leaving vast parts of the country without access to essential services. While her public efforts were rebuffed by the king, her private influence and unwavering stance provided a crucial counterbalance to the radical reformers, slowing their progress and ensuring that the channels of tradition, though narrowed, were not completely severed during her reign. Every dynasty is obsessed with the future, with creating a system that can outlast its architects. For Henry VIII, this obsession was singular, a male heir. He needed a successor, a next-generation operating system for England. In Jane Seymour, he found the hardware capable of producing it. Her entire reign, her purpose, was dedicated to launching this next frontier. The birth of Prince Edward on October 12, 1537, was the moment the future arrived. He was the ultimate future connection, the living embodiment of the Tudor dynasty's continuation. In our modern tongue, Edward was the AI, the artificial intelligence, that would one day govern the realm. He was a biological machine, programmed with the data of both the Tudors and the Seymours, designed to learn, adapt, and rule. Jane's role was to ensure the successful launch of this new intelligence. But a single ruler, an AI, cannot function alone. It needs a network, an Internet of Things, an interconnected web of devices and institutions that support its function. Jane's brief reign and her family's subsequent actions were instrumental in building this network. Her brothers, elevated to the highest offices, became the key sensors and processors in this new system, ready to guide and protect the young prince. The alliances she had carefully forged with the conservative nobility became the secure network protocols that would ensure stability during a minority rule. the restoration of Princess Mary, and the calming of court factions were all part of creating a stable platform for this new technology to be deployed. Jane would not live to see it. Complications from the birth, a final tragic system failure, led to her death just 12 days later. But her mission was complete. She had sacrificed herself for the ultimate upgrade. Henry VIII was devastated, mourning her as his only true wife, the one who had delivered the future. Her legacy was not written in laws passed or battles won, but in the infant prince sleeping in his cradle. Jane Seymour, the quiet queen, had created the next frontier. She had connected the present to the future, ensuring that the network of the Tudor dynasty would not just survive, but would be ready for the dawn of a new age.